All right.
Every single one of our recordings start with us going, all right. Yeah.
Yes. I edit these sometimes.
I know.
I edit them to varying degrees.
You went pretty try-hard on our last episode, I'll give you that much.
It felt necessary. We keep talking about random indie games, so I try to add a visual aid so people can have any idea what we're talking about.
It was cool. I really appreciated it. I'm going to put it up probably tomorrow, I think.
And just skip all the ones in the middle.
3. I'm not in them. I think I'll put them all up. I think I'll put them up in a row. Anyway,
that'll be a big diversion. All of your 11 and 12-minute episodes followed by 3 consecutive days of 2-hour videos.
Hey, there'll still be 11 and 12-minute episodes alongside them.
Oh. Pleasing everyone.
Dude, I got videos scheduled for like 3 weeks right now.
You're a one-stop shop.
That's the hope. Sorta. Not really. Anyway.
I didn't even know what it meant. I just said it, and then I'm like, all right, I'm just going to commit to this one and just see how it plays out.
And then I agreed with it, and then thought about it, and then let's stop analyzing shit.
Let's announce a new feature for the podcast, or a new thing tied to the podcast, which I added basically a Tumblr account, so you can now go to 4nerds.tumblr.com/ask, and that's a place where we can sort of have one single location to drop questions, because we're multiple people across multiple channels and multiple videos, and this is like the best way to try to make the questions go to one spot. So just as a reminder, this is for questions that you want to have answered in the podcast, and so they should be generally targeted at all of us. If you have specific questions for one person and it's not related to the rest of the group, and it's more personal stuff to them, that's you probably should just try to ask them instead of the podcast as a whole. Like, this is more general stuff. And when I tweeted it out last week, we already got a question. One person was paying attention, or had something to ask.
And generally speaking,
yep,
the questions are going to be for next podcast. We're not going to use this. We're not going to be keeping track of this live, I don't think, to try and catch viewer questions that way.
Yeah, I'm just saying this is our go-to place for questions now, because otherwise we have to hunt down obscure videos and figure out where they were left and stuff like that.
And then comments and stuff. Yeah, it's too hard.
So our first question we've gotten so far is Anonymous asks, what is your least favorite game of all time? What's your guilty pleasure game or games, and which they define as games that are almost universally disliked, but strangely you have a lot of fun playing them?
Huh.
And actually, I've had the advantage of knowing about this question in advance. I've had trouble coming up with a proper answer for least favorite game of all time, just because because it's like, what's the most hated game, more or less, or like the closest thing to a game you would hate. Now, games take so much effort to play that the idea of sticking with one long enough to continually have bad feelings about it is almost hard as a concept, right?
I disagree. There are some games I've played that I've been repulsed by within about 15 minutes beyond
those are the games
any redemption. Yeah, but some of them I was recording, so I tried to stick with it for 40 minutes, and then I was just I was done. I can only say that about 2 games specifically. I might as well answer the question. Number 1 is Bad Rats. Bad Rats is really, really bad. Atrociously bad. So Bad Rats is this game you can buy for 99 cents or something like that on Steam, and it's a Flash game that they ported, and for one, it barely works. Usually it crashes people's computers, and then if it does work, you play this really shitty, really violent physics puzzle game that's just there's a cat. You try to get a bomb to roll next to the cat so that the cat explodes into blood particle effects. And the puzzles are all stupid, the graphics are atrocious, the music sounds like ass, and the humor is about as tasteful as going on to stormfront.com and being I want to go into the comedy section and hear about how minorities are ruining the world and stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's actually a pretty racist game. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of a lot of the humor is derived of making fun of minorities. It's a really shitty game. It's a really shitty game.
Excessive.
How do they work that into a game about killing cats?
It'll be like you like send suicide bombers at cats and shit like that. Yeah, so this game has no redeeming value. It can't even pretend it has redeeming value. It's so bad. And the other game that I played that was terrible. By the way, it's a sequel to Bad Rats. If you want to check that out, the other it's just as bad. The other game that I played that I really hated is Toilet Tycoon. Because that
Toilet Tycoon.
It was like this weird. It was kind of funny because the game was like a translated German game, and for whatever reason they like used like Middle English to translate things. So it would be like. It was so strange. It would be like you'd be talking about toilets, and it would be like, you musteth go to the latrine, and stuff like that in the middle of a city. And instead of saying, like, yes or no to dialogue boxes, it would be like, agree and fi. And it was like, that alone was kind of weird, and it kept me going in this game. But for one, the AI cheated like crazy, and the graphics were, again, really bad. The gameplay was terrible. The music was like a shitty, like MIDI, like RPG level Maker MIDI.
Oh wait, so what was your obstacle in getting to the latrine?
I mean, you were like the owner of like public, private, like toilets, and
so did you have to set prices?
Yeah, people would have to like pay like to use your crappers and.
Yeah,
it was.
I know that you have that feature in Roller Coaster Tycoon. You could charge people to go to the bathroom, but then the poor people would be standing out there being like, "I don't like the price of the bathrooms. I need to go to the bathroom."
Yeah, see, that's a feature in a fun game. Imagine if somebody took that and only made that part of the game. There was no other parts to it. It was really, really, really bad. Just an awful, awful fucking game.
Okay,
so that answers the worst games I've ever played. Those two. They're tied. They're tied for horrible, horrible game.
So what's the game that you like that you shouldn't then?
I wasn't able to come up with one. But it's weird because I know that I do have an answer for that, but I can't for the life of me figure it out.
Just name the game you made. Just do it.
No. No, I won't do that. I'm gonna look through my Steam library and see if it jumps out to me. But why doesn't somebody else like field this question for a little bit while I do that?
Okay. I have an idea for one of the games that I had played to some extent that was just. The interesting thing is, the premise of the game is that you're supposed to prevent people from having their heads explode due to some weird disease. So I was about to say that it was mind-blowingly bad, but and then I was
why didn't you say that?
I didn't know how to say it in such a way that never mind. In any case, it was mind-blowingly bad in the sense that you had these really bizarrely rendered cartoon characters, and you ran a doctor's office, and you had to, obviously, it's sort of like the Tycoon game, where you make sure that you buy the proper facilities, a waiting room, hire a receptionist, make sure that you have qualified doctors, and, but these people, I don't know how to describe the artistic style, but imagine if you took the trolls from, like the old trolls from the 50s that were always butt naked.
I didn't know they had the internet in the 50s.
No, not those kind of trolls.
They're making a Trolls movie? Like the blue-haired, like, thing that goes on your desk.
They're finally making Trolls 1?
Oh. Funny.
Yeah,
also,
we saw the trailer for it when going to Kubo and the Two Strings. In any case...
Great movie, by the way.
Though I was really upset at the ending, but we can talk about that later.
We can skip that.
In any case, so imagine the trolls, except take their mouth and separate it, like tug it down to the lower third of the face, so that the noses are up really high, right between two very round, close together eyes. Oh, just one of the grossest human faces I could possibly conceive of. Ugh. In any case,
I'm picturing the annoying orange.
Oh,
the annoying orange is really gross looking.
The eyes have to be even closer together and further up on the head with the nose, and the mouth even lower, and always in a persistent frown. So most of the people would be coming in, and there were a couple of different illnesses. One of them turned them green, and they looked like on the cusp of vomiting. But then there was one where their heads had ballooned out to 2-3 times their size. And it was interesting because when you saw a doctor performing a procedure to cure them of said disease, if their procedure ended poorly, it could result in a fatality, at which point their head would pop.
God.
And it was just like, what? Now, this was a game, I forget the title of it. I'm sorry. But it came with a set of games from the year 2000. And that's where I'd also gotten the Dune 2000 game, which I absolutely loved. But it was part of this random mixed
the
pack
period of time where we obsessed over calling everything 2000, like that wasn't going to immediately date the game.
Whatever, 2000.
this
Pokemon
game
the
is
movie,
new and special and
2000.
amazing because it comes with the new century.
We called stuff 2000 for like the entire 5 years leading up to 2000.
Yeah, SimCity 2000, Tyrion 2000, the game you just mentioned, Dune 2000. Oh, jeez, there were so many. I can only think of those 3, but I'm sure if I sat down and thought about it. Anyway.
Yeah, so it was part of this huge mix set. It may have come with an Oregon Trail and other things, you know, just a basic starter thing of, here are some really cheap games that you can get. And yeah, I tried playing it, but in the end I realized, why am I doing this? Why am I finagling around with money and hiring people to run a doctor's office and then have, you know, patients die via head explosion if I don't do everything correctly? And
why have doctors at all?
Yeah, really.
Just topple all the buildings. Let's just give up now. It's over.
We definitely need doctors in real life, but I'm like, I was so stressed out by this game. It was probably one of the reasons...
People are saying you're talking about Theme Hospital?
What?
Is it called Theme Hospital?
I don't know.
I think it might be, because that's what people are identifying it as, and I'd be willing
people
to trust
die
them.
via having their heads balloon out?
Possibly.
Maybe. In any case, yeah, I swear it's probably one of the reasons why I didn't want to get into medicine. Maybe.
I'm just imagining a hospital themed around that carnival game where you with the squirt gun and the balloon. You just explode the patients. A really misguided version of the like medical center Japanese games.
They would needle the patients though, and sometimes yeah. How old was I when I was playing that? I must have been 9. Yeah, and I just like, you know what? No. So that was probably. I
actually own that game.
You do?
Yeah, I've never played it though.
So
it's a Steam game then.
Origin. It was one of the ones they were handing out for free for a while.
Oh.
So, I mean, obviously, growing up, I didn't have a very large selection of games, but the ones that I did have tended to be, you know, the classics that you would have on the Nintendo 64. That and my brother's large menagerie of racing games. And then...
Also on the N64.
Yeah. And then PC games were typically the ones that my father purchased, like the Myst series... Rem. I myself, though, had gotten Knights of the Old Republic and Star Wars themed games. So yeah, that reminds me of a game that I had never played that was awful, but my brother had, and it was called Hard Truck. And the premise of that was you were a truck driver, you know, picking up loads, taking them to another location. I think they may have had fairly accurate maps of the United States, so you were actually driving real routes and such, but you had to upgrade your rig, you would acquire money, and that would help you upgrade your rig and whatever. But,
sort of like Euro Truck Simulator and stuff.
It was essentially a truck simulator. And the interesting thing was, I mean, if you didn't stop often enough, your character would get sleepy. And
That's cool.
When you start falling asleep at the wheel, you just sort of see like a unified lid like opening and closing across the screen, so it would just fuzz out and be just very disorienting.
Some of us call that hard mode.
Yeah.
And I suppose I think some games have implemented that for like stunned or poisoned or like other status effects.
I'm just imagining looking up on YouTube with this game for like a no sleep challenge run or something.
I mean, the point of it was they wanted you to crash or something, and I think you could get pulled over by the cops for speeding. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm being too hard on it, but I couldn't see the point of playing it. But yeah, not nearly as stressful as having people's heads popping at your on your watch.
Yeah, no kidding. There's not really very many games that approach that level of stressful.
As for
just be a good doctor, or everyone's heads will explode. No biggie. It's a really chill situation.
But the problem was there didn't seem to be, aside from hiring the very best doctors and investing in the best equipment, the most up-to-date equipment, it seemed like there wasn't really a way to keep up with it. It was... Oof. In any case, I'm trying to think of a game that I liked that I probably shouldn't have liked. And, I mean, I haven't played it at all recently, but I actually, when I was younger, extensively played the Barbie games. Specifically the detective Barbie games.
That's a good guilty pleasure game right there. I can't think of much that really tops that.
And, I mean... It was interesting because I played the Myst games with my father, but they got me those games because they're like, oh, this is your level of like puzzle solving and detective business. Yeah. And I'm like, but,
it's not like Myst, which is nobody's level.
I absolutely love Myst. In any case, so you always started the games with, Barbie being like, hey, we have a case to solve kind of thing, and they had pre-recorded all of like as many names as they could conceive of, and so when I put my name in, it was always Michelle, and I don't know if they had a Carl or a Keith or a
probably not. Those are dude names.
Yeah, no, they did have a selection of boy names. They anticipated
maybe they were very open-minded Barbie games.
They anticipated that boys would be playing a game. So they did have all the names there. Now, what would be interesting is going back to the game and reading the list to see what the popular names of like the 90s were. Oh, that's a really
cool. That would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
It'd be Chad, Carl, Kareem, because Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was pretty cool back then.
But only in its entirety. You couldn't call yourself Kareem. You had to call yourself the entire thing.
And the interesting thing was they were all pre-recorded, like the names. So it was always in the book. And there were some creepy situations in the game where you would see a shadow, walking around a corner in a theme park, an abandoned theme park and stuff. And Barbie would be like, oh no, Michelle, look at that shadow. And you'd be
that's
like,
cute.
What? No, but it's... The Michelle would be completely out of place because they'd be like, "Hi,
Philip J. Fry." It's always my go-to for that. Me. Forever. Yeah. The Lucy Liu bot will always be my stand-in for the weird, out of place, like pre-rendered dialogue being baked into a sentence.
Yeah, and
I will always remember memory deleted.
Yeah, so
Fry, I'll never forget you. Memories deleted.
Anyway.
Yeah, the games would always start with you. Typically, it was at the behest of a distant family member or friend. They would call on you and your pals for aid, and they would have you, talk to suspects, investigate around.
You want to give us the short version?
Well, what was the interesting thing was Barbie, at the end of each game, after you found enough clues and enough, there were like footprints on the ground and handprints and stuff. It was interesting, but you could only ever see them through your magnifying glass.
Because Barbie is severely nearsighted and doesn't want anybody to know.
The reason why
are we like Fatal Frame?
The reason why they were so replayable for me and my friends when I was little was the fact that there would always be a final challenge. to catch the bad guy. And it would usually be one of 3 different mini games in a way. I remember one, there was a boat chase. You had to go over obstacles or around obstacles and chase the other guy in the boat. And if you caught up with him, you caught them. There was one in the carnival one where you went down a slide and you had to, keep just behind the guy who's, obviously just a black shadow, so you can't tell who it is. And the slide splits. And you have to, it's sort of like a reflex game. You have to choose which part of the slide they chose to go down so that you could follow them. And if you miss them, too bad, you have to do a different challenge in a different part of the world to catch them again. So, and then at the end, there were, I think, at least 2 to 3 different culprits that you could find. And they would always do the, I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling kids kind of deal.
It weren't for you, Barbie and Michelle.
Yeah. Pretty much. And then Barbie would congratulate you for solving the case and everything.
Thank you, Michelle.
The Turing test was a lot easier back in the 90s.
I feel like I need to respond to some of this before people get angry at me.
Wait, what's going on?
The reason why I usually say, Shell, give us the short version is I've heard these stories at least twice before.
Oh!
And that isn't just like, every podcast she tells a story I've heard before multiple times.
They haven't necessarily heard it.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's just from my perspective, it's just like watching Mulan for the nth time. It's like, I get it. It was amazing.
I got pretty funny comments about Shells talking a moment ago where someone said she's talking about trolls a lot right now, and somebody else says try F5ing in response to somebody else saying the stream wasn't working, but the same guy responded, I did, but she's still talking about trolls. F5 is powerless to stop her.
Oh, funny. Yep, so that's my worst game, at least from my childhood, and my guilty pleasure game, also from my childhood. I can't think of things that I'd return to for that. I don't really play much for video games unless it's with Wander anymore.
We're slowly beating Setsuna and Abduction. It's hard.
Okay, so what about, is it going to be Wander or Koof that talks next?
Bird, did you ever think of a guilty pleasure?
Yeah, so my guilty pleasure are shitty Flash games.
Yeah, just in general, like all of them.
A lot of them. I play games on Congregate and Newgrounds and stuff still to this day. They're usually even games I've beaten before. I'm just like, I have like 30 minutes to kill and I don't really have anything to do. Like every couple of weeks I'll just like fire up like Bloons Tower Defense or like games that are games that aren't even that good.
Or
like
Bloons
Tower Defense is still Bloons Tower Defense is still kind of arguably good, but like
I've been down that same rabbit hole of being stuck in college and having like the gap between classes and no good video game sources, so I would just play like Tower Defense games on Congregate until my next class started.
Yeah,
Hey,
so that's
not nearly as bad as the Flash game I saw my cousin playing once, where a kid would trip on the sidewalk if you didn't raise or lower the platforms for him properly.
wow, that's banal.
Runner Limbo
game. Those are different. That's a popular mobile.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't play those.
What's the difference between a mobile and a Flash game, then? I thought Flash is using Flash animation, but a lot of mobile games use that, don't they?
Nope, they can't. They usually...
Yeah, Flash
Mobile
is too
games are
intensive
usually-
actually for mobile platforms usually.
Well,
Really?
You're not
mobile
allowed to for
platforms
security
actually-
problems.
And I think iPhone literally
Yeah.
doesn't have Flash. Like you can't even
Yeah, for security
play Flash
issues.
stuff on websites.
Flash is really, really, really easy to hack.
Yep.
So most iOS devices don't let you. Well,
Yes.
I mean, most mobile devices. iOS definitely doesn't allow you to do it, but most mobile devices entirely don't have Flash support at all.
It kind of works.
Although
Kinda doesn't.
Flash
Yeah.
became one of those things like Kleenex, where it's like used as a name for all things that are not what it is, but people don't know what to call the overall thing, so they just call everything Kleenex.
Yeah,
It's also kind
kinda.
of become a style, if that
Yeah,
makes
it's true.
sense.
It did become a style,
Yeah,
but
they're like,
I
I
think
don't know,
that
it's 2D and it's on a computer. It must be Flash.
I don't
Yeah.
think that people would call like Unity 3D browser games Flash, for example, but maybe they do. I don't know.
Everything
I
that
bet
looks
a
like a
lot of people
shitty
wouldn't
indie
even
game is
make-
called Unity, regardless of
Yeah.
the level of Unity it has.
Whoa.
Solid point. All right, so that's my guilty pleasure game. So why don't we punt it off to Koofbot.
Bird's guilty pleasure is congregate.com. All of it.
Basically.
Some of those games have actually gone to Steam, I think. Like, have
Yeah, a lot of
graduated.
them have.
Yeah.
Defender's Quest.
Oh god, Defender's Quest. Yeah, I remember that. So I had to think about this for a while, and for me it had to be like a game that I was held hostage by Let's Play, basically, and I'm like, we're finishing this because I started it. And I think one of my least favorite games, like it's almost a bit of a tie between Anima, Gate of Memories, and every 3D Sonic game. Because they're both types of games that are just released in a state where I'm like, I can't imagine people enjoying this, but it's in stores, and it's like it feels like it's for no one.
So what was the Anima one? I know the Sonic ones and how bad they are.
It was just bad.
Anima is a game where everyone that I knew who also does videos or even tries to play games or general that encountered it in any capacity gave up about an hour in because they couldn't take it anymore. And
I played that game.
I did a full 29 episode series on it, which is up to the finale with multiple types of endings and everything. So I've experienced pretty much the full breadth of this game, and man, it is just never well designed on any level ever. And like the only real good thing about it is just looking at screenshots of it. I'm like, oh, look at that art style they really pulled off with their tiny dev company. I'm like, oh, that's nice. But then you have to play the game, and the voice acting is. It's not just that the voice acting is bad from like a performance level, it's bad from a technical level in that it's badly recorded. So like on top of being bad voice actors that aren't convincing and flat and boring and monotonous and slow.
Princess, you gotta save the world.
No, it's the opposite. It's not. Instead of muffled, it's like they're too loud.
It's too loud. It's like too compressed.
They have the Let's Player problem. No, they have the Let's Player problem where they literally clip. Yeah.
Oh.
like if you played the beginning of the game, you would have encountered like the red queen or whatever the hell they called it in the beginning of the game. That's your mentor character, and every time every time the red lady's in the game, she'll have some line where her audio actually clips because it's too loud or she's too close to the microphone. I'm like, you couldn't do another take? Like, that was your only one? Like, you can tell it's a bunch of voice actors they probably hired over the internet. Like, they hired them over the internet to submit voice clips the same way that you hear about, like, Jim Sterling being in a video game, and of course he's not going to go visit the studio or anything. But I think that's their older voice actors, so they're all massively different qualities, and it's all kind of garbage. But then the story itself mostly doesn't make sense, all the way down to, like, the bad ending of the game features somebody who literally sacrificed themselves to encase this person in a prison, and when the person turns evil, that the person that sacrificed themselves to imprison them in the first place is like, I can't believe you would betray us all, and it's like, you literally sacrificed yourself to imprison them in the first place because you knew they were a bad person. How are you surprised now that they're a bad person at the end of the game? And it's like a lot of really weird gaps and bad storytelling, bad voice acting, bad everything. But then skip all the story and all of its monotony and nonsense, and just go to the gameplay, and it never feels good even remotely. You attack tons of bullets. Everyone's a bullet sponge. The melee combat's really repetitive. The ranged combat's even more repetitive. And they don't feel like... It's not like Devil May Cry where you gracefully go back and forth between sword and gun combat, and it all combos together really nicely. It always feels like you're playing wrong, no matter what, to the point where I would give up and look up other people playing the game to see if I'm crazy, and every person I could find also looks like they're playing it wrong, so it just feels like the game isn't playable, like there's no right way to do it. And
it's a game designed to elicit feelings of awkwardness no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, and it's the ultimate test for the type of person that tries to say get good in response to all questions of difficulty ever, because you eventually hit a point where it's like, enemies take like 500 hits to take down, and they can take out half your health every time they hit you, and they have these massive undodgeable attacks, and it's a massive time sink to take them down, and you have a super limited healing pool, and as far as you can tell, like, there's no real way to avoid half the moves, and and on top of that, there's bad voice acting and bad visuals, and sometimes like there'll be like a lens flare thing, like a bloom in the background where you can't even see their moves like magic properly past the white background, and even on a basic level, ignoring all the weird difficulty issues and how long the boss fights are and how tedious they are, just on a basic level, out of all the boss fights, there's like 2 that have the foundations of being a fun idea for a fight in the first place. Like, most of them are just bad ideas done badly. There's only like one cool one. Like, there's one neat one where there's like a little boy that's actually immortal or something, and goes back and forth between 2 magic elements, like you're playing Ikaruga, and so you have to go back and forth between your 2 magic elements, which is how the game works, is you switch between 2 bodies all the time. So it's like, oh wow, they use the thing that's
actually fun and good.
Yeah, they actually use the core mechanic of the game as a boss fight mechanic once. In the middle, it's not even a climactic fight or an intro fight, it's one fight like halfway through the game and then never again, which is weird. But then on top of everything else,
so
like, yeah,
they scratched at something good, and then that was it.
It's a weird nightmare. Like, there's a part where you're walking, like, they try to have colorful dialogue randomly trigger while you're walking around, but sometimes it leads to a moment like the evil book that you have that you can transform into the form of. He will just start singing Reading Rainbow. And
wait, like legit Reading Rainbow?
The joke is he's saying Reading Ergo instead, because his name's Ergo and he's a book, but he'll keep going. So it's not like not only is it a bad joke, but it's not even like one line as a throwaway thing. He will go like verses in, and he keeps going for like 30 seconds of bad singing of a bad joke.
God.
And I'm like, oh god, this is still going. This is really happening right now.
Wait,
and like,
this isn't a game?
Yeah, this is a game. This is a game that happened.
He's doing Reading Ergo?
Yep, because his name's Ergo, and that's the joke. And he just keeps
He
going.
literally saying Reading Ergo.
Yes.
Butterflies in the sky.
But worse than that.
It's really forced. But then extra bad things. It's got ignoring the super repetitive, like it has the super intensely long bullet spongy boss fights that take forever to take down, but can obliterate you very suddenly, and it feels like you have to cheese them to beat them. You fight the same enemies over and over again for almost the entire duration of the game. Like, if a level has like 2 enemies, those are pretty much the ones you're going to see forever. There's not that many levels to begin with either. The way of trying to mix it up is to add platforming, and the platforming is god awful because it's one of those games where I'm sure you've experienced bad platforming in a PC game before, where it often involves a character that goes up and down weirdly fast and has really fiddly movement in a 3D space. So you can't.
But they're very like floaty, so they're hard to like actually move and stuff.
Like one of those games where you're like really like, no matter how long you play, you're always super not confident about where you're actually going to land whenever you jump, even when you've done it for a while. Like, it's that kind of feeling.
I hate that so much.
And the funny and like, this is like, Anima is a special type of bad, because while I was playing it, I could often literally look at it and be like, oh, this is how you would fix this. And I'm not a game developer, but I'm like, I know how to fix that part and that part and that part. Like, they have parts where...
Well, they probably just didn't... They probably developed it too fast, or just didn't give a shit, honestly.
Or they just didn't have proper people to have feedback from or anything.
A lot of, like, you know, game design problems with controls and stuff are pretty well solved at this point. So, like, it's not hard to, like, make a character that controls well if you're using, like, an out-of-the-box type of solution. Like, anybody can fire up Unity.
If you're new to development or phoning it in.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. If you're phoning it in... But if, like, you decide, like, I want to make a third-person adventure game, go to Unity.com, the asset store, and buy third-person adventure character controller, and then you're set.
Like, one of the big things that really stood out to me in that game was that it would sometimes go into 2D platforming mode, but when it went into 2D platforming mode, you still had 3D controls, which meant that you could walk... Like, even though you couldn't physically move forward and away from the camera, you could angle diagonally, which would affect your momentum and directions, because it wasn't in pure 2D controls. But on top of that, your camera, which is like it is for the entire game, was 100% fixed to an exact part of your body, and would never have any give or any adaptation to that. So that meant every time you jumped, your camera moved at the exact same pace as your character, with your character, as a third person behind the back camera. That was zoomed way out and everything, which leads to the really awkward thing of, like, when you're 2D platforming, that means that when you're going left to right, every time you jump, the entire screen goes up and down with your character, even though you're not leaving the screen or anything. When, like, if it was static, then you could like follow the arc of your jump, because the camera would be staying still and just scrolling, and like stuff like that was like stuff that immediately stood out to me. I'm like, wow, this would be way easier if the camera made any sense. But instead, it doesn't make sense, and we have to play it like this forever.
So what's your guilty pleasure game?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, you've given a very good answer for hated game.
Oh, my guilty
Well,
pleasure
yeah,
has
it's-
to be the Dynasty Warriors series.
Yeah,
played-
Are those really considered bad, though?
Yes.
they're awful.
The entire series
like-
consistently gets
okay.
reviews in the range of like 4 out of 10, basically.
I didn't
And
know that. I thought they
they're-
were fairly well received, even though I've played them. And
They're
I think that
received in audience fairly well.
it's
So,
one of those
like,
things
you know,
where
the
you talk
audience
to
is
people,
like,
the only people you hear about that talk about them are the ones that like them because no one else will talk about them in the first place.
fair
Because
point.
it's not
I've
Call of
never,
Duty where all the people who don't like it are loud about it because there's nothing to be loud about because you just don't know it exists. But like they're intensely repetitive and they're poorly voice acted and they don't tell their
Yeah, they
story
are.
very well in most iterations and they're usually technically
Yep.
not very good games. On like they
Also
don't
true.
perform well, and they're often some of the games are like a weird mess of mechanics that don't fit together or aren't explained or don't have a reason to exist. Like in some of them,
Yeah.
really weird amounts of bow controls you could do for reasons, but why? When you could just stab everybody. Like imagine like flattening 300 soldiers with 4 swings of a sword, or slowly picking them one person out away with a single shot. You can do a single bow shot with a manually aimed camera every 5 seconds. And I'm like, why would you do that? Like, who would ever use that mechanic? But
I think the only thing I was
completed
ever
like 5
tempted-
games in the series 100%. Like multiple characters maxed out, and every single storyline finished, and every feature unlocked, and every campaign completed, and so on. It's
Yeah,
a
I think
problem.
the only version of the Dynasty Warriors games I was ever interested in was the Hyrule Warriors, obviously. But
Yeah.
I think we demoed that, and I was thinking to myself, I mean, sure, you're going through mobs of literally moblins, but
Yep.
I mean, you're just taking points, maybe releasing new characters. I don't know if that's the type of game for me. Just plowing through things. I really love story, and that's much to Wander's.
Oh, those-
Well,
They're
you're
not
not getting that.
That's-
You're not
yeah.
getting that Dynasty Warriors.
Not really. You're getting cheese voice acting and stuff. And like
I
really
will
heavy
chop
like
you
Mary
down.
Sue interpretation of cutscenes for Zhao Yun
Yeah.
over and over again. Because they
Yeah.
arbitrarily made him the main character, so he gets a really intense CG cutscene at the beginning of every game. Where
I
he
mean,
like
is it
will
just-
stomp a horse to explode an entire boat or something.
Yeah.
it's pretty nuts.
Is it sort of akin to a fighting game, but it's not a one-on-one? It's just you versus everything. Because I would say that
I would say
fighting
that Dynasty
games
Warriors
have
is just a 3D
campaigns.
brawler. Where
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
where like 2D brawlers were games like
It is like a
Double
beat 'em up.
Dragons and stuff like that, where you just go left to right and punch things. But now
Remember
it's in
Castle
3D with a
Crashers
spinny
and
sword.
how we'd like roll through things constantly? Kind of like that, I guess. Maybe.
I remember the very first time I ever picked up Dynasty Warriors, I rolled like a 300 hit combo without getting hit once.
Yep, that's pretty normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was literally like, oh, hey, like there's this new like game I got. You should check it out. And then I
Yeah.
played it and I fucking steamrolled the game. And then I was like, am I doing well? Am I doing bad? I don't know.
What's
And,
interesting is-
that was it.
When I see these video games and watch various television shows, anime, whatever, where you have the warrior fighting against, you know, a number of, if not like dozens of mooks, and you think to yourself, does an individual have the stamina for that?
No.
Of course not.
Oh.
No.
And
It's
They're
I
wearing
superhero.
armor. It's hard to move.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were also talking about, we were playing I Am Setsuna, and Setsuna got partially munched on by a massive penguin. And I was thinking to myself, you know, if that massive penguin bit you, it'd be pretty bad. You'd be
Yeah.
bleeding and down for the count.
I think
Yeah.
that the average soldier during those time periods in war fought for 3 to 5 minutes.
And then they died of
before-
malaria. It was
Well,
very tragic.
I mean, I know that
Well,
like that's
gangrene
about
was
as long as
for,
people
like,
could move.
even minor wounds.
Yeah.
If I've learned anything from the olden times based on Oregon Trail, it's that you click on 3 things and then you die of dysentery. And I think that's enough history lesson for me.
You
I
can't
don't need...
extrapolate that backwards to talk about medieval warfare. That's a very good point.
Yeah, I mean, I got this figured out.
Yeah.
That's how sieges worked, right?
Yeah.
Well, and then they started resorting to, you know,
There's like load the
catapulting
dysentery into the
bodies with the
catapults.
Black Plague.
Well, I mean, that happened.
One of the first instances of biological warfare. Yeah, that was...
Load the disease-looking cow, lob it over the walls, and let them die horribly.
That's my wife.
I mean,
Yeah, Iron Age warfare was pretty incredibly brutal in every single respect.
yeah, and I mean, you see how they actually had, masses of like armies and such, and it's just like, obviously that's not a thing anymore. I think, what was it, the Revolutionary War had a lot more guerrilla warfare, and that's sort of persisted to this day, though now with
a lot more than
planes and...
a lot more than what? Like, relative to what did it have more guerrilla warfare?
About... Oh, well, you know how, like, up through the Napoleonic Wars, they were still having the whole chivalrous, we're going to line up our troops in plain sight. Actually, Civil War.
It was up until our Civil War, and then the Americans were like, nah, fuck that, we don't have the manpower for that.
Right.
Yeah, the advent of, God, what was it? Basically, like, automatic weaponry basically brought down, like, any sort of Napoleonic-style warfare, if I remember.
Well,
my history.
I think it was like the 1870s when they brought the Gatling to Japan, and the Emperor had used it on the samurai. Or was that just a dramatization from the last Samurai movie? Was there?
I know we had a simulation of that the other night when I was playing Neo with Wander, and it's a samurai game, but I had played ahead and got the hand cannon, and so we just watched as like a samurai slowly ran across the room at me, and then I just blasted him backwards with the hand cannon.
It was brutal.
And I'm like, that was a microcosm of history right there.
That sounds accurate.
Yeah, I think as soon as things like the Gatling came about, I mean, sheesh, and I mean, even naval warfare to an extent, with planes, suddenly they were sitting ducks.
Yeah, but then we put planes in the boats, and then that became a thing.
Carriers, and then you pretty much just have a fleet of maybe one or two battleships, and then an aircraft carrier or two, and I don't know.
Or if you're America, you have like 15 aircraft carriers and like 30 battleships.
I feel like I should try to explain why I like Dynasty Warriors, because everyone kind of knows the reason why people might not like Dynasty Warriors, like usually like the intense repetition and lack of variety and technical problems and all that other stuff. But like I started playing them when I was, I don't know, like 12 or something. I started playing literally like Dynasty Warriors 2, which is the first one, as weird as that sounds, because it has a naming convention problem. For those that don't know, Dynasty Warriors, the first game in the United States called Dynasty Warriors is a different franchise than the rest of the games called Dynasty Warriors in the US.
What?
Yeah, so Dynasty Warriors 2 in the US was the first game of its series in Japan. But when it came here, they gave it the same name as their previous fighting game, and then they called it Dynasty Warriors 2. Dynasty Warriors 1 is not what you think of as Dynasty Warriors. Like it's a different genre entirely. It's like a fighting game, and there's a reason why everyone starts with 2 when they even talk about the franchise, because I don't know if anyone even has seen the first one before.
No.
Like it's like a PS1 game that people wouldn't even recognize at this point. But these games are essentially like these. It's like they're really cathartic because you just wipe out these whole groups of people at once. But besides that, they're like oddly satisfying because they're methodical. Like you get dumped into a map that's like half your units and half their units, and you have certain like key targets to go after where you're like trying to take out all their different officers and leaders, or even trying to make specific events happening by protecting this person long enough to get to this part of the map. And like weirdly, every map is filled with like surprise secrets and like different events that only happen when you do certain things that you don't necessarily know about in advance, or they might even be a nod to like a historical event or something. But like but like every mission is usually like this like 20-minute moment of like just carving your way across the map, getting like 1,000 kills and taking out all the key targets to make your party succeed more, basically. And starting with the third game, they even added co-op, so it was just all the more like just fun, just burn through the entire map together, basically.
I think that's precisely what had made, I suppose another guilty pleasure game I could talk about would be the Lego Star Wars games.
But we haven't discussed Wanders yet.
Yeah.
But one thing that might surprise people, though, because when someone doesn't like something, they don't pay attention to it, so they never learn more about it, which is fine. But the surprise with Dynasty Warriors is that they actually keep like reinventing and adding things over and over again from game to game, whereas people that just see the surface level of like button mashing wouldn't notice at all. Like in Dynasty Warriors 6, they straight up had like siege warfare where you would clear out the area in front of a gate. You would protect people that were literally building ladders in front of the gate and hold off soldiers from attacking them so that they could build ladders to actually put one up against the wall so you could scale the ladder and destroy their groups of archers and their defensive catapults and stuff like that, so that then people could construct a battering ram to beat down the gate and stuff like that. And so you're like sort of like facilitating it instead of directly doing it, which is a different twist there. And then Dynasty Warriors 7 had like a weapon triangle, like Fire Emblem and stuff, where different weapons had different categories, where if you had the weapon that it was your opponent's weakness, you could interrupt all of their actions just by attacking them. But if they were the weapon you were weak against, then you were almost useless against them. Like you could damage them, but they could literally attack through your attacks because they could just go through. They would be interrupting you instead, and so they'd have like an icon over their head to help you tell which one's which, and you could like switch weapons on the fly, but you could only hold 2 instead of 3, so you had to sort of strategize around that. And then things got even like neater with specifically Samurai Warriors 4, which I think is the best game they've made that I've played so far, which has Samurai Warriors 4 is a really cool mechanic where you play as 2 characters simultaneously when you're playing alone. And what you do is you can go to the map screen, and the map has like 8 different objectives happening all over the map at once, like protect this escort over here, or take down this gate, or stop this officer from retreating, and stuff like that. And there'll be 2 spaced out for you to actually physically get to in time. So what you do is you actually give standing orders to your 2 separate characters of what they're going to do when you're not controlling them. And because it's a current generation game, it finally has the technical prowess to be able to load the whole map more or less at once. So you can actually press a button to hot swap between the 2 characters from across this huge map instantaneously with no loading or any technical stuff becoming a problem in the way. So you'll essentially like go after one objective on one side of the map while sending your other character to go after the other objective, which they probably won't complete on their own, but then you can hot swap to them and they're already going to be there because you sent them there. And then you can like keep going back and forth, ping pong between 2 characters across a map, solving a bunch of different objectives at once. And it's oddly really engaging and like fun to like micromanage all that stuff going on. Whereas, and the comparative lack of complexity to the combat itself kind of facilitates being able to do stuff like that, where they make the actual gameplay more complicated instead, like how the level plays out. Not necessarily hard, but it's just having something to just be busy with. It's actually like more engaging than most of the loot grindy stuff that I've encountered, where the moment to moment is kind of hold the mouse button on the guy till he dies, which is less engaging than all the stuff going on there.
Yeah,
it does have a good progression system from the game, from what I remember. You know, unlocking new combos, getting extra stuff.
Oh yeah,
a couple of extra weapons, that sort of thing. I always enjoyed that bit.
They keep adding complexity to them, where they keep the basic combo system the same thing of like where square is light attacks and triangle is combo ending heavy attacks, and they usually stick with that on some level. But then they keep adding new variations where instead of just having a super move, you can also have like a special ability that's unique to each character. That's a special thing they can do, where like they can use an ability to cheer that would increase their allies' meter, or they can do some sort of weird, like they can enchant their weapon with fire, or they can shoot musket balls, or like everyone has some sort of weird quirk they have a new button assigned to, where they have a thing that you have a reason to try to go back to. So they keep adding variety to them, and they're oddly engaging. And they've even got better with the storytelling now, where they finally gave up on the idiot idea of trying to have a separate campaign for every character. So in a Dynasty Warriors 7, they literally had one campaign for the entire game. You would play front to back, and you would keep swapping characters with the timeline. And it was actually the most cohesive story so far, instead of all these crappy things they did before with like Dynasty Warriors 4 or whatever, I think was when they had like 5 missions per character, and they had to really awkwardly tell either they would try to stretch out really boring stories for 5 missions, or try to compress really interesting stories into 5 missions. And like it was problems where like that one, like chubby Mr. Tsutsu would have the same length of story that was also given to like Sime-Yi, the guy who fathered the Jin Kingdom and won the war and was and like stuff like that. Like these
sounds
huge
compelling.
These huge differences were given the same length, and it was a problem. But 7 just gave it one giant campaign, and they just assumed you'd be smart enough to deal with swapping characters. And Samurai Warriors 4 was good about having basically there's one separate campaign for each individual group of characters or dynasty or so on, and each one's the length of each campaign was dictated by how much story there was instead of other stupid reasons. So the people that have been fans of the franchise have been very rewarded for being fans because they keep getting better for those people at the very least.
Okay.
But there's still games where you press square a lot.
So, Wander, what's your least favorite game, and what's your guilty pleasure game?
I have trouble thinking about these things, and I hate it when people ask. But
I'm sorry.
You had all this time.
No.
What was the game?
It's
that
a
you
fan
were-
question.
I've been spending this entire time quietly trying to think of a game that would
How do you
like.
think poor
fit.
Anonymous is going to feel when they see this podcast and they hear that? They're going to be like,
Okay. So what was the worst game that we'd
So
played?
I'm thinking of games that I've been like shackled to for Let's Play purposes, and honestly,
Do those exist? Don't you just quit?
Yeah, you did.
Digimon.
Oh.
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like I
Actually, I have a
liked
question about that. Weren't you saying that had something to do with Atlas's team for some reason? Because it doesn't seem to have any connection to Tokyo Mirage Sessions.
It's made by the same people.
Is it?
Yep.
That's really the worst game you could think of?
So when I think worst game, I don't think of like a bad game, because if that's the case, it's going to be like Soda City or the dumb squirrel game that Gnomes and I played that one time.
The squirrel game?
The squirrel game.
That was truly awful, but like ultimately, when I
They're
think
irredeemably
bad,
shitty games.
yeah, when I think of like bad, I think of a game that could have been good but wasn't good, and like, you know, a lot of people really.
You can't.
A lot of people will say like No Man's Sky kind of fit that, but at least like I had fun doing it, even if like it ultimately ended up being shallow. For me, Digimon was kind of the same vein, where here's this like really cool monster collection game that was so shockingly shallow that I honestly had trouble kind of understanding it.
I really didn't like any of the supporting cast from what little I saw you play.
Like, an easy example would be, there were only like, I would say 20 moves in the entire game. And I'd say ultimately it was like, you know, ice move, tier 3, tier 1, 2, 3, support move, team wide, you know, for each stat, or, you know, a single character each stat, if that makes sense. So it's like, here's the team wide speed boost. Here's the, like, hits everybody ice move, or hits one person ice move that does more damage. And then you just switch the element or the stat. And that's it. And then each Digimon did have a unique special ability attached to them, which was cool, but ultimately, like, it was so painfully cookie cutter, I had trouble enjoying it.
I really didn't like the character animation.
Yeah, I could get past a lot of stuff, but it was also one of those where it's like, it wasn't a Digimon game. There were Digimon in it, but it wasn't about Digimon. It shouldn't have been about Digimon. It shouldn't have even had Digimon in the title. It should have been some guy goes into the internet a bunch and does dumb chores for people. Also, sometimes Digimon.
I think I figured out why you think it has something
Also
to do with
boobs.
Persona. So, Digimon's developed by Mediavision and published by Bandai Namco. Tokyo Mirage Sessions is developed by Atlas and published by Nintendo. But it does say that Digimon uses character designs by Suzihito Yasuda, who made characters for Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner and Durara. So maybe that's where you heard the reference. But I don't think they have anything I think it might be like a ripoff of that type of game to an extent.
It is
but I don't think it was made by them at all.
It is such a heavy Shin Megami Tensei like ripoff that it hurt. And then like playing Tokyo Mirage Sessions was like really refreshing because it kind of felt like the same type of game, but they actually like didn't just phone it in. You know, it was much okay. So it's still phoned it in person, like the Persona line.
Yeah.
but like, the character animation wasn't super boring.
Oh, yeah.
The characters felt like they kind of belonged there. There was...
If you just look at progression systems and combat for Tokyo Mirage Sessions, it's like, oh yeah, this seems legit. But the story's phoned in as all hell, unfortunately. And it just keeps getting more phoned in the more you play it, and it's really a bummer.
I got as far as the second concert, and I was just like, alright, I give up.
Yeah, I'm in Chapter 5. By the way, Chapter 5 is literally like, hey, you want to replay the first 4 dungeons?
Oh,
yeah.
My favorite.
That's how phoned in this game is. On top of all the super tropey, boring characters that never get more depth than they started with. It's... Whew!
That's rough. I might sit down and finish it someday, but...
One of the characters has a 3 side quest arc dedicated to the concept of her getting used to liking cute things.
Wait,
Wait,
about cute
what?
things?
That's her entire story arc of all of her side
me.
quests. Is that Curious slowly gets used to liking cute things.
Is she just like, what is this rabbit?
At one point,
that
you get used to
speak of?
liking cute things by going into a dungeon and specifically murdering cute things. You have to kill 10 because they send you on like MMORPG side quests.
Those.
Yeah,
I hate them so much.
Unbearable.
It's pretty bad, especially because they don't scale up the difficulty for them. So it's like, go back and kill a monster you killed in the very first dungeon.
And that's supposed to get you to like them.
Yeah, it's... And, like, the entire point of the game is kind
I
of
did the opposite because she was my favorite character until then. And I'm like, this is stupid. Your character's stupid. I'm like, no.
More animals suffer so that you feel for them.
A lot of the point of the game is
terrible.
like, these characters are going through personal growth, and as such, they are getting, they're growing as people and getting more powerful in combat for some reason.
Yeah, that's literally the story, because when they grow as people, they unlock what's called a performa, which unlocks new abilities. It's like it's literally it's a physical manifestation of personal growth, but they don't actually sell you on the idea of the personal growth being real.
What this persona is? The personas were something that they rejected about themselves that they then had to accept.
It's very similar, except for much more positive.
Yeah. The thing they're rejecting doesn't matter, and them accepting it also doesn't matter, and nothing matters.
Yeah, Persona is, like, legit dark. There's, like, people actually dying, and it's kind of like a weird, fucked up world.
This is just like, would kill you.
These weird people from another world have shown up, and they're kind of messing with things, so we should go stop them. Oh, they're making everybody feel really depressed in the middle of town. We should probably go stop that. Oh, but let's go watch a concert instead for, like, 10 minutes, because this is important.
Oh yeah, you can stop mid-dungeon when you're supposed to be saving somebody from being possessed, and you can go off and, like, film a commercial.
Yeah. Or do an entire side quest chain or stuff like that. And, like, nobody in the universe seems to even understand that, like, bad things have happened. They're just kind of like, oh man, I felt, like, really bad yesterday. Not like, I felt, like, super feverish and, like, being outside sucks. And
it's weirdly enough the same story mechanic as Olav Zestiria. Where people would just turn into monsters, but then they'd come back from being monsters like, oh, everything's okay now. You beat the monster, so I'm not a monster anymore.
Yeah, I'd still say I think I'm more motivated to go back and beat Zestiria than I am for Tokyo Mirage Sessions, because at least Zestiria kind of was
Zestiria never puts you through 90 consecutive minutes of conversation.
Yes.
That's all very, like, not much going on, and not much drama, and not much, like, interesting going on, but just, like, people re-exerting their tropey personalities or slowly giving you the exposition that sets up what's going on best, like, at a snail's pace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's painful.
I haven't fought anyone in 2 episodes.
Oh.
It's amazing. It's just talking and talking.
Bird, you okay over there?
But, like, just not much happening in the talking.
Everything's cool. Nothing to worry about. Nothing bad ever happens to Bird.
I've just been glossing over chat and how everyone has uniformly decided that humanity is not worth saving.
That's fine. That's normal.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to think of the many redeemable things and aspects of humanity. And I would have to say
we made video games and dank memes.
Well, I have to say that most of it comes from creative pursuits and
true.
animals. But then,
Like dank memes.
then I have to give too much like credit to animals for enriching human life.
Everyone's
Mutual love of animals brings people together.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah,
Hopefully people don't
to
dislike
Digimon.
animals out there.
Yeah. So ultimately, my problem with Digimon, like, if it hadn't been a Digimon game, like if they had been totally unique with the monster designs and not even called it a Digimon game in the slightest, I think it actually would have been really good, because then I wouldn't have been disappointed. But I went into it expecting, hey, this is going to be a legitimately good Digimon RPG, because there hasn't been one of those since World 3, arguably. No, the DS ones were actually pretty decent. But, I was expecting something of that caliber, and I knew that there have been games in that series that have been that good, and it didn't even come close to matching up. Even the combat was worse and less interesting, and it's just like, how do you downgrade like a turn-based RPG, turn-based combat RPG kind of thing? Like, how do you downgrade that from a Game Boy DS game to a PS4 game? And so I was sitting there, like, growing more and more disappointed. And I think the
probably happens when you tell a company to make a bunch of assets under a timeline in 3D.
And they probably just use a lot of computer. They probably use a lot of computer assisted, like, algorithmic stuff to cut a lot of corners.
It was really lazy, and I think the most I think the worst part, though, is how, like, one of the coolest things about the Digimon universe is, like, the digital world, and it's this, like,
Digimon, monsters.
I can't hear digital world without
champion.
thinking of Don't Hug Me Anymore.
In the digital world.
Oh,
yeah,
God,
so I assume you guys have seen at least some amount of the original series,
I really
right?
like the theme song from the fourth one, which is interesting. Look to the past as we head for the future.
It's very 80s.
This is like when I'm the asshole that knows the Johto theme song instead of just the first Pokemon one.
I hate everything about the original the Pokemon cartoon. But
even
yes,
Johto, the theme song for Johto, it's so upbeat.
Don't care.
Admittedly, I've only ever watched a
Wander
scant
never got to
number
the
of
top of the
Pokemon
hill.
episodes from the first series because our one TV could pick up WB. That was it. It just it would be static, and you could just change the bunny ears on top, and it could pick up WB and like the Disney Channel and stuff. I thought that those were cable, but we didn't have cable. It was just on a different airway.
But so
continue your Digimon thoughts.
you finally get to the digital world. I'd say around like chapter 12 or something like that, and you're there for a cutscene. Nope, you're there for a cutscene, and it's a clearing, and you see a generic squid monster that you've been seeing since the beginning of the game, and then a little bit more cutscene in the same clearing, and you're like, so are we like here now? And then immediately you get teleported back to Japan. And
so the whole game takes place in Japan with like you summoning Digimon like their Pokemon instead.
Yeah, you go kind of into this like super generic like.
What's the point? The whole point is the digital world. What the hell?
Yeah, that's kind of the reason why I hate the game is like you get to the very end of the game, you're like, yes, I'm in the digital world. And there's nothing there. It's just a linear corridor of forest before you fight the last boss, who, by the way, really boring. I mean, it's effectively just another what is it? Who's the it's another Andros fight, head and hands, beat the shit out of it kind of situation. It's like this could have been done in 1,000 more interesting ways. But you definitely did not spend your budget on that, and it makes me really sad. And I had to play through the entire game because it was probably one of my most popular series at the time.
Oh, it's okay. Nobody ever beats JRPGs anymore anyway, or any games. So I think no one ever feels like they have to have an ending anymore.
I think the thing that actually saved that series for me, though, was I actually beat 90% of it in like the first week, which was awful. And then I didn't come back to it for 2 months. I went to go visit Bird in, like, between. Came back, was still fine, kept being fine for, like, another 2 weeks, And then I filmed the finale, and that was it. I was done. And I was like, this is actually kind of refreshing in a way.
That's a lot of game to get through in 1 week. Wow.
Yeah, it was atrocious, but I had like 90 people watching me at the time on Twitch, which
So
was
you were
pretty
encouraged by
impressive at the
numbers.
time. I mean, you kind of have to. Like, after a certain point, you have to, like, set aside the sense of, like, self-satisfaction of, like, yeah, this is, like, really good for me from a, like, business standpoint, so I guess I'll do it.
I'm just the crazy person that tries to finish everything and slowly goes insane as a result. Yay.
I try to finish everything. There are games that I'm, like, much more motivated about finishing than others.
So, any other questions, or was it the singular
one? The
one?
other one was Guilty Pleasure.
Guilty pleasure.
Actually, the first Digimon game. I'm being one-track mind with this one. It's like glorified Tamagotchi with like the worst battle system ever.
I was ready for you to play Ride to Hell. I thought they were going to say Ride to Hell.
I haven't even touched that game yet.
I'll just never forget you defending Ride to Hell, so I thought it was going to be your guilty pleasure.
What?
Look, it looks better than that Squirreltopia game. So
what? What?
Probably
Squirreltopia
better than
was
Squirreltopia.
It was the game he was talking about earlier, where he played as Wander, or he played with crafty gnomes, and they were squirrels, and it was fucking awful.
That game was truly a sin against gaming.
Mm-hmm.
Like Soda City.
Yeah.
Soda City. Have you guys heard about Soda City?
We
about 7 more emails
City.
about Soda City.
We've podcast. Yeah, that's. We were just making it funny. The pain is real.
Okay, so what was another thing that we were going to talk about? Was it a movie or something else?
Actually, no, I don't want to talk about this. You'll talk about it forever.
Okay, sorry. It was probably about Kubo.
Yeah, Kubo and the Two Strings. We're not going to talk about it, but go watch it. It's really solid. Shell hates the ending.
Well, it's not necessarily the ending, but how they got to the ending.
We can't talk about the ending. I
haven't seen it either.
Not yet. I want to see it.
Fine.
I'm trying to get to a theater to see Two Strings and Don't Breathe.
What's Don't Breathe?
It's a movie about people that try to break into a house, and it turns out that the guy that owns the house is like a super badass, but he's blind.
Right, and then you can't make a noise or anything because he'll find you.
So is it presented kind of like a horror?
It is a like horror thriller. But
now, here's the question: is it all from their perspective?
I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Okay, because I really would like to watch two versions of that movie. Like, kind of like I'd love to see two versions of
Oh, you mean you want to
Chuck
see it
and
from
Dale
the blind man's
versus
perspective?
Evil or whatever it is?
You could watch it with your eyes, and then you could close your eyes for the authentic experience and watch the movie blind.
No. Like, I want like a third-person one where it's this guy going around murdering the shit out of people.
Has there ever been a movie filmed in the perspective of the monster, aside from like Predator per se?
Like for the whole movie?
For the whole movie? I don't think so.
Because I know that in Predator there were the instances where it was seeing the cast, and you knew that it was the creature that was looking at them with its infrared vision or heat vision.
At the end of King Kong, it turned out the man was the real monster.
Well,
that's every monster movie. Every zombie movie is like, oh, it turns out that mankind is the real monster. This is like some profound point they haven't.
They tend to be the one to bring about things, but the Predator was legitimately an alien. So that reminds me that there seems to be a number of horror films coming out as of late. A lot of them,
they're always coming out because they're super easy to make for really cheap.
Yep.
True.
Horror is like one of the most profitable genres, I think, besides superheroes.
So there's this one coming out,
actually,
and it's called
it's like 3D.
As the Bow Breaks, and I was thinking, oh, you mean like the cradle will fall and down will go baby? Cradle and all? And, so it's about this guy and his wife, and I suppose they're professionals. They're maybe even potentially very rich CEOs of various companies, and they live in the city and whatever, but they can't conceive their own child. So they find a nice young woman, and I think they might even be having her living with them in their house, but she's essentially their surrogate, and they're taking care of her, but then she starts getting really crazy, like your baby's inside me, dude, and like crazy stuff. And he goes, what? And I think she might want to eliminate the wife to get with the guy or something peculiar. And I mean, she has all the power. She could always threaten to kill the baby. At the same time, that couple could just be like, so I don't know. It looked really weird to me, but I've never would have thought that would be the premise for a horror film.
Mm-hmm.
Never.
That there's a surrogate babe. There's a surrogate mother.
Yeah,
that probably
a surrogate mother who goes crazy for the husband.
I frankly think that's a genius premise for a horror movie.
It's genius, but it's something I would have thought of.
Mm-hmm. Which is what makes it genius.
It's straightforward enough, because there's often like three-way relationships in horror movies where one of them becomes the villain of the horror movie.
True. And it's about like loss of control and
right, they
stuff
don't
like
have
that.
Control because she has their child.
Mm.
Yeah. That also reminds me of, what was it? Was there a film where a woman legitimately gave birth to the devil?
Probably. I'm sure
probably
that's happened.
A ton of those.
I don't want to think about weird birth videos.
Woman birth.
Sorry.
They decided it would be a good
Devil
idea
movie.
for fifth grade sex ed to show us on day one.
The first result I got was 11 good, bad, and just plain horrible demon baby movies.
Good stuff.
One of them's called The Devil's Due.
With about an hour and 15 minutes in, we fielded the very first viewer question.
Yes. Okay, let's see if we can do the next one faster.
Oh, wait, that's what I was asking. I had asked about any more questions. So there aren't any more? Or there are?
There are more, I think. I think we had 3.
Yay! Then ask away. No. What's the next one?
Yeah. We'll try to be faster.
I don't think any of them are that kind of time-consuming, really. Like, one of the ones is Max Damage asked, what is your opinion on making montages of best moments? I hear they're fun to make and are not extremely difficult, but you guys are the people? It was weird, a little weird.
Fun to make, but we play too big of a variety. Like, if you play one game exclusively, then making montages is no big deal.
Well, I mean, it kind of makes sense for certain things. Like, Soviet Womble does highlight reels of just, like, the random shit he plays with his clan. And, I mean, that's effectively what we do. We just don't cut it down into highlights. We just give him the full thing raw.
Wait, was the question about highlights versus montage videos?
Yeah, and like, okay, montages would be useless for us, but like highlights we could do. It's just I'd rather focus on my commentary, so it's like being legitimately funny the entire time if possible, or at least legitimately entertaining, because I've run into this problem when I play with highlight reel Let's Players, where they stop talking until it's their time for a highlight, and that drives me up the wall so much that I refuse to do it personally.
Yeah, the surprise about when you watch those people who have YouTube videos where it's a bunch of stuff cut together and everything, that's exactly how they're generally recording, is they're just kind of sitting there silently playing the game until they see a moment that they can turn into like a thing. And so that's how that's their gameplay experience, which also means that if you're playing with if you're next to other people, suddenly you're like, it's a really weird juxtaposition.
So remember how I did that like YouTuber reality TV show that never went anywhere?
The one with Cry?
No, I never heard about that.
With Cry and Eat My
That was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was like 2 years ago.
That was the one time I played Chivalry.
I never heard about that.
It to you, Bert. Okay, yeah.
Wasn't there... Who were the other ones?
And
like
I thought I was one of the most important people in your life, and you keep secrets from me.
You were around less back then, though. Let's see, that was back when we played Chivalry, so that was around April 2014.
I wasn't being serious.
Whoa.
That's fine.
We're old.
Yeah,
we're all old.
It was a long time ago, but
in a galaxy far.
But
far
I call the video "Red Warrior Needs Skill" badly.
we should play that again. By the way, that was fun.
Yeah. So
our 2.5-year anniversary.
Okay, but so I was in a competition with a bunch of bigger YouTubers. They were doing like a reality TV show thing where like every episode was going to be a new game, and kind of the weakest link would be voted off every
They
time.
were choosing team leaders and stuff. It was almost like Survivor, but video game
I ended up
style.
being third place for most of the games, which was frustrating because I was 1 point off. I was like, I could have been a team leader above like Cinnamon Toast Ken, Eat My Diction, Minx. It's either I Am Spoon or Spoonerism. I can never remember which one it is. Shit, who else was that? And Cry's two buddies that he always streams
and
with.
they really seem to like you too. At least like Minx and a couple of the other ones.
Like my team seemed to legitimately enjoy me, which is awesome. But then it never happened again. I was like, all right, whatever.
I always wondered what happened.
And at some point, I'll probably be
YouTubers are not organized, is what happened.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely not.
I mean, it could be that it was too difficult to get everyone together, or I don't know if there was some weird...
Oh, yeah, it was awful trying to get people together. It was like
there's a reason why a lot of the
Sure.
co-op shows we've ever done all end at the end of the first season, at the end of the first session, and never have a second session, and so that's how many episodes come out, is just whatever got done the first day.
Yeah, that's a big... I remember I was telling Keith the other day, people were like saying, like, I never finished series. It's because a lot of them are multiplayer.
Yep.
and how many subs did you have back then?
Wander was
at that
probably at
time,
like
100.
300. Yeah.
No, not even.
Yeah, that was the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was super early in my channel.
He would have been like
I wonder-
6 months into making videos.
Yeah.
So the team I was on was with Minx, Cinnamon Toast Ken, and Spoon. And Spoon would not talk for a lot, but then he'd go like really funny for a little while, which I was kind of okay with because he was hilarious. And
But
then,
they used
like,
that for the montage work.
Montage!
Yeah, he used it for his highlights. But, like, you know, it was legitimately funny, and, like, as a teammate, I was kind of okay with it. And, like, there were definitely points where, like, we would work together regardless of, like, whether or not he was talking. Like, he would kind of stick with the team and not run away. Cinnamon Toast Ken, on the other time, I think said 2 words.
Oh,
Yeah.
got a badass
And-
over here.
Yeah, and, like, didn't really stick with the team and stuff. And, like, Minx and I were definitely communicating the entire time, and it was just, like, you know, generally a pretty positive experience.
How do you edit all that down, though?
It never did. It never got edited. I've still got the footage somewhere, and I'm, like, super tempted to, I'm super tempted to just put it up regardless of the fact that there was kind of an NDA.
The problem is, I mean, you don't necessarily have the consent of any of the other players, so...
Oh yeah, what's probably going to happen is I'm just going to message Minx at some point and be like, yo, you wanna like, do that Unreal Tournament thing we were going to do that one time, and actually, you know, be a relative size where they take me seriously for it. Or not, I don't care.
Yeah, because I think they'd only chosen you because you interviewed well in their little roll call thing, right?
I don't know why Cry picked me. And it was awesome at the time and super validating. And that was
Saw your
actually one of the main...
destiny.
Yeah, really.
It
was
is
weird,
like
though, 'cause-
slightly crushing to be involved in that kind of thing and have it never have proof
Yes.
it ever existed. Like it's
Yes.
just this weird. It's essentially just a story, and that's it. And
Yeah.
it's like, but it's Cry. Like what the fuck? He's so big you can type Cry into Google and he's the first result over the instead of the emotion.
Yeah. That's a pretty funny way to describe it, yeah.
You mean being the next search result under an actual word. Yeah, that's definitely impressive.
Yeah. It's right
I
over
mean,
there.
that is
Like
actually pretty impressive.
yeah, it's right next to with like if you type Jim into Google, you get Jim Sterling. With the
Really?
name Jim. He's above Gaffigan and whoever else, and Jim Collins and Jim Beam.
Well, I mean,
I see. So
internet-
ranking actors.
Internet
by
SEO is a
importance.
huge thing, and I can't imagine actors are particularly interested in it.
And seeing how their first name stacks up to other first name
Oh yeah,
A-list
yeah.
actors.
Probably doesn't mean anything to anybody, except for people like us, where it's our
Probably really
living.
helps to have a unique name, which reminds me
Well,
of
you can't get,
names.
You can't get put in... Oh, that's true. We will talk about that. But you can't get into, like, the Screen Actors Guild if your name is too similar to, like, an already existing actor's name, for example.
Isn't that why
you-
people
you
make
had
up new
told us about
names?
that.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a weird concept.
Yeah. So do we want to switch topics to our name origins, I guess?
I guess on the topic of the highlight reels and stuff, like on my old channel, Sad Games, I actually used to make them. They were this big process I would do once a month for our channel, is I'd make the highlight reel of that last month of videos. And it's a fun thing to do,
you did the
but
one for the whole year.
Yeah, you've got to have so much time.
Yeah.
Because it's tough because you have to have the memory or some system of tracking down moments that are worth using, and that was like on Sad Games we did like 10 to 15 minute videos once or twice a day, but like Wander and I both do like half an hour plus videos like 6+ times a day and stuff like that. So like it's a massive archive of video, and it's different because back then I used to be on a part of a 2-person thing and we would just be talking shit and making jokes, and that was the point. But now that I'm like when I make videos on my own, which is most of what I do now there's like there's way less high and low and more just like it's more of a consistent experience, really. And so the idea of highlights is like it's actually kind of hard to even think of things to put in a highlight reel oftentimes. Yeah. Like it's the type of thing that where I could almost see myself editing them together if I could find the clips, but I probably would only ever do it if I was like some big YouTuber that had their own subreddit where a bunch of people would be like contributing time codes and links of like their favorite moments or something, and that would be the monthly video.
I don't watch for YouTube, but one of the YouTube channels that I really like is actually Extra Credits. And they do talk about video games, but they talk about video game mechanics, plot, and game development issues. And they give really nice, concise, like 5... I think they're all 5... Are they 5 or 10 minutes?
Oh, I have to interrupt for a second.
What?
People in chat are legitimately wondering who's Minx.
I don't know who it is.
She's a YouTuber.
I don't know who it is.
Oh. Well, that's weird to me, because like before this happened, I knew who Minx was.
Is it the RPG Minx? That's what comes up when I type Minx.
RPG Minx.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no. Like always, it's always another 1 million plus subscriber person I've never heard of. There's so many of them now.
There really are. It's really strange, honestly.
Holy cow, yeah. Weird, they're everywhere. I mean, Shell, that's not super related to highlights, though, because stuff like Extra Credits is just a scripted video.
Oh, I know that, but...
I think the term for it is basically video essay.
A video essay.
Makes sense.
So, I mean, but wouldn't a very heavily edited video game review or highlight reel be similar in the fact that you're talking about the game, the mechanics?
Highlights are easier than scripted
the difference here is when you talk about a montage or a highlight video, you're talking about something that had a bunch of footage and then was edited down to something. But a review or a video essay is just they write a script and then they get footage to match the script. To show in the background.
One's like a building up process, one is a trimming down process. If you're making a review, you're going to select your clips to build up to points that you want to make and draw out.
Yeah.
Whereas a montage is just like, I kind of remember this moment being kind of cool, let's put that in. Oh, this moment was cool, let's put that in.
I see.
Yeah.
I would almost think that montages wouldn't be that cohesive then.
No, they're not.
They're usually
which
not.
is part of the reason why I don't do them. Part of the reason why I stopped doing montages was for a little while I was doing highlights for Gmod for like a short period of time. You know, I was curious. It's like
you hit 100, so you tried to have a format change.
Yeah, people wouldn't be able to see the continuity of one event occurring to the other.
But yeah, it frustrated me. And actually, this is about the same time one of my favorite YouTubers switched over to highlights, and I realized I wanted to see the whole round of Prop Hunt. I didn't want to just see, you know, a funny moment here and there. Like, it got really frustrating.
Yep. And there's no compromises thing. You just have to pick one audience to appeal to basically. Like, video game Donkey will never do a full playthrough of the Fault. No, that's not even a game. Sorry. I tried to just ad lib a game and I just stumbled. But he'll never do a full playthrough of a game on his channel, and like you'll see it from front to back. It'll always be these weird, like random clips that are funny to put together, and that's just the channel. And that's you can't really do a crossroads between the two, and they're very different types of YouTubers usually.
Yeah, very different audiences that they're appealing to.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Like it's like JonTron won't do a straight up Let's Play anymore, probably, Or ever,
Yeah,
really.
he just
he
gets
doesn't
on people's
want to.
streams now. But he, weirdly enough, he, despite leaving Let's Playing, he kind of does Let's Plays whenever there's a sponsored video.
Sure.
Every time that he gets every time it's time for him to do a sponsored video, he just records Let's Play of it and then edits it into a highlight video, and that's his video.
Yep.
Which is a weird
That
change.
is weird. That is a weird change.
Yep.
But
He became the donkey.
yeah, so I did these Gmod highlight things, and at the time there was like no metric difference. Like it was like maybe 10% more views.
So you
Maybe.
figured that all the effort that you put into the editing
It was
wasn't
not worth
necessary.
it. I would rather film 5 more videos in the time it takes to edit that one video. And so that's what I started doing.
And are you paid, like, is everything based on the view as opposed to how long people stay in the video?
Sort of. I do get more money because my videos are long. So I actually have a higher CPM than like a highlight channel. But highlight channels tend to get more views, so it kind of balances.
I just wonder if someone would be able to sit through a highlight video longer than actually a playthrough.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Highlights are way more marketable, but I also don't care.
Right.
Highlight videos are generally shorter too and less frequently made. So really, it's a bunch of it's more work put into a shorter video that usually a larger concentration of your audience watches, as opposed to a bunch of videos where people choose what they watch amongst the lineup. Like it's a totally different like structure of channel, basically. In fact, it's almost detrimental to even try to do highlights if you have a high output, because the highlight it could be lost in the flood, basically.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't get a return on your time.
Like if you miss an episode of Tokyo Mirage Sessions and you suddenly notice the number's two numbers bigger, you're like, oh, I missed the previous one, and you just go to the previous one that you didn't quite notice. But a highlight is a floating island, and if you don't notice it, you never knew it existed.
Yeah, it actually reminds me of the anime and video game conventions I attend to sell my artwork. I can spend maybe 10 hours on a digital painting, and I can print, copies of it till the end of time for anywhere between 30 cents to $1 a piece or $2, like whether it be prints, bookmarks, buttons, you name it. And those plushies, which are absolutely adorable, I could spend 2 hours on one. Obviously, there's the skill involved to create each one by hand, and then the materials. The materials admittedly aren't too much, but I remember going to conventions and trying to figure out the prices, and like, people aren't going to buy them for the price that I was putting. But people did, because they appreciated the handiwork. At the same time, plushie sellers were coming over and they're going, these plushes are amazing, like compared to the standards I usually see, and I'm a plushie maker, and I'm telling you your price is too low. And I'm thinking to myself, then what am I going to be selling these little things at? It just, the prices that some of the plushie sellers were suggesting were what I would consider to be too astronomical for a convention setting. So
I mean, really, it's just a supply and demand thing, and outsiders shouldn't try to make up your own prices.
I was going to say, just sell them until you can't, up the price until you can't sell them anymore,
If you can't sell them, drop the price. And if they're selling too fast, then raise the price.
Yeah,
right.
That's
if you run out of them on day one and it's a 5-day convention, then maybe they could be more expensive and stuff like that. But otherwise, like random people just like it. They might just mean it as a compliment, or they might mean it as genuine advice. But if it is advice, it might be misguided if they aren't selling already.
Right. The only way you can really do it is just listen to the market.
Right. And so, like, the first convention I sold them at, I knew the price was probably a little low. So, yeah, they all did sell out immediately. So I upped the price by another $10 for the second convention, and people were still buying them. And not as many of them sold, but once again, it was a much, much larger convention. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was a factor, too, because my prints and other things weren't selling as swiftly as they would at the smaller convention. But I mean, there was one lady that bought 2 of them because she couldn't decide which color she liked more. that was interesting. Getting nearly $100 for plushies just from one person.
Yeah, you should keep us updated on that. I'm very interested to see where that goes for you.
There's the day that you met the richest woman in the land.
I don't know about that. Like, when I was cramming the week or 2 ahead to get the plushies done, because all my other stuff was done. I had made the buttons, I had ordered the prints. Everything was all set. It's just like, okay, now I need to make more plushies than I had last time, because the first convention I had ever done, I had made 6, and they all went. I made 2 more that night, and I was like bleary-eyed because I'd been at a convention all day long. I'm like, I can't. And they sold 2, along with the prototype, which I hadn't anticipated selling, but people liked the prototype too. So, but then the second convention, yeah, I'd made 12, was it 13? 13. And all but 4 of them sold. Oddly enough, people didn't like the pink or the red ones.
$50
know.
for a plushie is actually pretty reasonable when it's handmade in custom colors and a unique design.
Yeah, it's not a carnival price.
Yeah.
Right.
These are pretty nice things, not the like shitty thing that you win for chucking a ball at a thing at Six Flags.
There are
They're usually,
seasonal
like,
plushies.
They're like made out of paper and shit.
They're
too.
awful. Yeah, I don't know why people get them.
Well, my Red
To shut
Dragons
their
do
children
have
up.
very soft glitter fleece fabric. That's very rare. I had to like scrounge
Glitter
around the
Fleece
showing
sounds like a
fabrics.
pony name.
Glitter fleece, yeah.
Yeah. Well, no. A My Little Pony sheep. The occasional sheep. You just run across.
Oh god, can you imagine?
Fleece.
Can you imagine like a knockoff, like imitator of like instead of My Little Pony, it's like magical sheep people.
Magical sheep people.
Yeah,
That sounds like an Adult Swim version.
Yeah, I like that idea.
It'd be like
It's
really
just
poorly
like-
animated to save costs, where everyone barely moves, but they all say lines at each
like
other, like
Brad
Aqua Teen or
Neely.
something.
yeah.
Now for some reason I'm just thinking of My Little Crony. My little crony, my little crony. And it's just like a bunch of like
Don't
healthy...
Do
Hey,
not
you
give the minion
guys.
people ideas. We don't need more
guys.
minions in our lives.
Yeah,
The wave needs to end.
Yeah.
The minion craze somehow made the original Despicable Me feel like a worse movie.
I know.
I would
Retroactively.
I've never watched Despicable Me or the sequel
They're
for the
actually
express
pretty
purpose
good
of the
movies.
fact. Well, I don't want to be driven mad by those guys. I really don't. But
They're not that bad.
But back to like the topic of the films and stuff. Yeah, I can see how like the profit margin is less effort into an item that people are willing to pay just as much for versus spending a lot of time on something that. I mean, then again, my
The
plushie
Ubisoft
saved me.
model.
My plushies did save me at that last convention though, because of the fact that they were high ticket items compared to the smaller things.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bring one over. Or more of them over. I'll show them on the video, even though people won't be able to see.
Yeah, only people that watch this podcast will be able to see.
And no one does that.
Oh, and I also have Prototype Owl, which
I made myself
Wander
sad.
thinks is hideous, but I'm going to make it pudgier. It will be cute.
We get some amount of viewership.
Also, I can't see me, so how do I know where everything's positioned?
Yeah, hold on.
Also, people in the video must have gotten, the full view of my owl flannel pajama pants.
The full view of ass.
No!
I was gonna say, what does that mean?
I actually named my butt the full view.
Ah.
Chat, we're sorry we can't do face cam for stream. I don't know how to do that without messing up the YouTube recording.
Pink and blue dragon. It's so cute. Look at this.
Yeah,
and my other one is ironically pink and blue, but is magenta pink. Yeah, people didn't like the pink. My grandma ended up with the pink and purple one, and Carl's parents actually bought my strawberry one, or at least I called it strawberry because it was red and green. But yeah, everyone loved black, purple, navy blue, turquoise blue, aqua blue. All the cold colors did well.
Well, then now you know your market.
Yeah, pretty much.
Now you can save money and never buy other colors again.
That's true.
Yeah.
You're joking, but that's also 100% true.
That's
I used to work in an
true.
upholstery shop. That's just reality. That's just what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the upholstery shop, you probably got a lot of gray and taupe was really in, right? It was furniture upholstery, right?
I worked at a car upholstery shop.
Car upholstery. Okay.
Yep.
Well, wait. So people. I'm trying to think of
people get their car
refurbishing-
seats fixed, basically.
Right, but aren't there company brand upholstery that they need to acquire, or do they actually do custom tailoring so they can get the odd colors?
Yes, both, all, everyone.
Yeah, 'cause
it's whatever the people want when they come in. It
my
was like
mother
literally
always-
like you walk into a counter and say the thing you want, and you get put on a schedule. It was that kind of shop.
Yeah. My mother always lamented the fact that there used to be blue interiors to cars, and now you can only get tan and gray and black.
What if I had a carpet that I wanted upholstered?
Or like
in your car,
furniture.
or like a house.
Like if I just brought in a carpet and just like rolled it into the shop, and I was like, "Can you upholster this?"
But you would
But-
just
but-
get a carpet. Like
It's a new
No,
carpet.
I'm just saying.
There's carpet-
Can you upholster the carpet onto another carpet?
what does that mean? You're not saying real things out loud right now.
I think. Wait. So, do you want a new a new pad underneath it? Do you want it to be? Do you want it to be a slip cover so that you can wash it? I know that they do have those rugs now where you can
I
wash
want,
the slip
like-
cover.
I want to take my carpet and then make it look like a car seat.
Oh. So you want
Yeah.
to make your carpet into a car seat?
No, I just want it to feel like one.
I think this is one of those times
It's
where
a
we
joke.
just kind of ignore
Like you want to have a giant vinyl floor. Your feet would sweat
He
so
nailed
much.
it.
Your floor would feel like skin. You'd have a living house, like I talked about from Necroscope last time, with they
a
make body
living house?
houses.
Ew.
Yeah,
That is disgusting.
yep.
Wow, Keith.
I read fucked up books.
I
It's
was-
fun. It keeps me
I was
reading.
trying to dig out like a weird thing when I started saying this,
And
and I
you dug
didn't
it
know
out,
where it was
Bert.
gonna go.
Yeah.
You
I
dug
dug
it
it out.
No, you want to
so
talk about
hard.
body horror? I'm game. Let's do this.
I'm good.
Let's talk about that
I've read
disorder
all
where
the
people think that like fibers are
I-
coming out of their
it
body.
loses focus with you.
We've all read Uzumaki and whatnot. God, Uzumaki's really good. Anywho, are there any other topics we want to cover tonight, or I think we're done?
I would actually. This is kind of a preference. Not preference. Preface. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I've been playing Necropolis this entire time, as is
we know.
what I do. It's not better. There's just more of it, which I guess
Well,
solves one
I
of
guess
the
we're
problems.
experiencing it.
Yeah, we are. Like,
No matter what.
they added ranged weapons. They did not balance ranged weapons. I fire from my hand, and everything dies. I'm this
Well, then
big man with
it'll be an easy playthrough then.
It is comically easy. I'm like, oh man, it's one of those shark guys that always took forever to kill. Point, shoot, dead, move on. Like he's rolling at me, I shoot him
So
twice.
that sounds like it's
for
gonna-
background, because this wasn't really introduced very
That
much,
sounds like it's
they
gonna
just
improve
came
the
out with their
experience.
first like supposedly big update for
second.
Necropolis,
They've
where
done two. They've done two
well,
big
it's,
updates so
well,
far.
I'm saying it's the big update because they're literally calling it Brutal Edition. Like it's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
rebranding of like this is the one that's
because-
going to turn
it's because
things
they
around.
literally added
Actually,
a brute class.
they added a whole new character class, the Brute.
Yeah,
So that's
But-
hence brutal.
I gotta say something has gone horribly wrong if you're rebranding your game 2 months after release.
No,
Well,
it's not-
something
it's not-
has gone
it's not-
horribly wrong.
It's not.
Just
it's
look
not
at the game.
rebranding.
It is
They didn't-
rebranded. The Steam page is literally the game is called Necropolis Brutal Edition now.
What? Okay.
That's the official name of the game
Oh.
now. They literally rebranded it already. I'm not joking. Like it's really called that now.
So when they add the mage class, are they going to call it the...
A Mystic Edition, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think they just
Oh,
rebranded
God.
it in an attempt to get people to look at it again after potentially being turned
Well,
off the first time it
does
came
that
out.
mean
Probably.
does that mean it
But
has
it's only been
separate-
out for 2 months.
You mean it has separate reviews, separate...
No,
No.
No, they just
It just
changed the
has
name on the
different
page.
Because
Yeah.
getting separate reviews and stuff would require releasing a separate product on Steam, which
Yes.
would cost them money.
And make
Yes,
people
that's
even
not
more
happening.
mad.
That would make people incredibly mad. Look at Ark.
Oh, actually, that is a controversy that I
Wow,
wanted to
that
talk
got
about. What? Me saying "oh"? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I've never heard Wander express an emotion that exciting.
That
TeamSpeak
emphatically...
should've
also likes
heard-
to spike randomly.
Yeah. You should have heard me last
why
night.
I-
When,
we
You can use that to sync up. You can use that to sync up our footage later, Keith.
Yeah, so let's sync up the visual of you recoiling in horror at the sound that Wander made.
you should you should have heard me when Keith showed me the wall demons in Nio
Oh,
last night.
you mean I was watching? Did you see my comment? I said it looked like the Womp boss from Super Mario 64.
Oh, you're right.
And that's why I kept going like "Urgh!" in chat over and over again.
So I really hope that game actually has 3-player, not just 2-player, because it was legit fun. I hated playing it alone. Playing it with Keith was like the most co-opiest of co-op. It was a satisfying feeling.
It was true bro-op experience.
Oh, it was so bro-op. Instead of having like Dark Souls death, you have a combined like kind of revival meter that like ticks down whenever you go down, and so if you get
it's
to
like
your
the
friend
Gears of
fast
War
enough,
revive, but with a time limit.
Yeah,
that never
so,
goes
like,
back up.
There's kind of a limitation, but at the same time, like whatever, just don't die much and you'll be okay, because you still get like elixirs so you can heal whenever you want, mostly. And so we just kind of like fun-fettied our way through the game. I don't know, that's not the right word, but it describes it well.
Fun-fettied? You're talking about the fact that when you kill things, they explode into loot?
I'm pretty confused as to what he was getting at with that one, but that works.
He was really happy with the loot explosions, where when you kill somebody, multiple colors fly out of them in every direction,
really
like Borderlands.
It's got no. Borderlands never did it particularly well with the loot drops. Diablo always did it amazingly well, where you kill a thing and it explodes into a shower of shinies, and you can just
all the shinies go like as they fly through the air. Yeah, that was good stuff.
It was,
and if a gem lands, it goes like ba-ding.
Yeah, so that's pretty much what that's pretty much what Nioh was, and it was really satisfying. It was like a really refreshing, fun co-op session, which I was expecting it was going to be a nightmare.
It could have been a nightmare, but the hardest boss in the game wasn't available for co-op.
So we just decided to go do things on nightmare mode, which was actually a giant pain in the ass. But like whatever. But
to describe the hardest boss in the current demo, you would have to like just keep wailing on him for like 3 minutes straight of perfect dodges and attacks. But at any moment, he could hit you with a critical attack that would deplete your entire key meter, and then you'd be stunned, and then he would execute you by just stabbing you through the chest, and the fight would be over. From like full health to 0 instantaneously.
That's the one thing I don't like about Nioh. Like, it takes the whole Dark Souls, like, occasionally getting crushed by a boss to the nth level where everything can do that to you. And that feels a little weird to me.
Yeah,
the rest of it is, like, solid and fun and nice looking. Ish. Still looks like
they're games that want to end you.
Yeah. But that is actually the controversy over Necropolis like renaming itself actually reminds me of a controversy I'd like to talk about. Scorched Earth. Ark Scorched Earth. Keith, you heard about this much at all?
I saw you playing it, and I was like, oh, that has an orange background instead of a green background.
I mean, it's
that's
Ark.
all I know about it.
No matter what, Keith. And that's fine. It's honestly not for everybody.
I've played Ark for 5 hours now, I think, total, and I can't figure out how to enjoy any part of it. It's just, I'm totally incompatible.
I think it's just enjoyable from, like, a working with a team of people perspective, even if it's, like, kind of slow and boring. Modding the game a bunch helps, and then changing the settings so everything is actually fast also helps a lot. But, so they recently released a paid DLC, $20 for pretty much a new map, bunch of new dinosaurs, and I don't know if there's really anything else. And when I say like a bunch of new dinosaurs, I mean like it's a decently large number. Wyverns, manticores, death worms. Like
it almost seems like a reasonable DLC for a game in early access, except wait, there's something wrong with that sentence.
The game's not done, supposedly.
Yeah, the game is still in early alpha, and so the entire internet is like flipping out about it. Now, personally, from my perspective, this feels like a DLC that I'd expect in any other game, so I'm kind of like, I mean, the game's in early access, which is weird to have an early access DLC, but whatever, I can kind of get behind it because it's actually kind of fun. It changes the game up in kind of an interesting way, and sure, $20 is a little bit pricey, but it was a good excuse to get back into it. And honestly, if the game had been finished, I wouldn't have given a shit at all, apart from grumbling about the price.
Right.
And from my perspective, it feels like the internet just wanted something to hate.
That is what they do at some point.
The internet.
There's always a game that's next. It's like that episode about where they killed Britney Spears in South Park, and they're like grooming up Lindsay Lohan to be the next one to slowly be torn apart by fame and the public image and everything. Like there's always another one. They turned into like the lottery, that like old that short story.
I've only ever seen Britney Spears talked about favorably in latest articles.
Well, she kind of cleaned up a bunch. She grew up a lot.
She was a star at 18 years old.
Yeah, well, she
didn't have a choice to grow up. It just happened to her.
She was a Mouseketeer, so she was pretty much fucked from the get-go. Yeah.
Hey!
Sorry.
Don't say that word.
But most Mouseketeers and Disney child actors usually end up doing pretty poorly. I know Neil Patrick Harris is a good example of not, but most of the other ones usually have kind of bad days or just
he did pretty terrible until he got kind of ironically revitalized in the Go to White Castle movie, the Harold and Kumar movie. His career was dead, and then that totally revived him. Because he was still known as Doogie Howser at that point.
Yeah, the problem
makes sense.
The problem with child actors is, obviously they come into a lot of money at a very young age, and sometimes their parents see them as a meal ticket or actually abuse the power that they have over their children's finances, and essentially keep trying to find new contracts for their children because it's the only way that it's like you know how parents live vicariously through their kids by being the super sports soccer mom or dad kind of thing. Sort of like that. Except they have a child actor. And the problem is, the child actor, when they do get into those teenage years and they're no longer cute enough to be a child actor, and unless they acquired, good looks after they reach puberty, or their role changes. They're not perceived the same way as they were as a child. So they have to evolve into a new character trope or a new type that they can play, or they either get left by the wayside or find themselves, still swimming in money, but because they don't have anything to do with themselves anymore, they use it all on drugs and nights out and expensive things. And, also...
And there's BoJack Horseman.
Also...
I need to watch that show.
If you think about it,
just finished 2 seasons of it.
How can celebrities know who their friends are anymore?
Oh, they can't.
They don't. That's actually the premise of a lot of BoJack Horseman.
Yeah.
Oh, really? I've seen it, trailers of it, and I thought it looked bizarre. But maybe I'll have to give it a chance.
It's kind of one of those.
It is, but it's incredible.
Yeah, it's one of those shows where if it weren't for the writing, it would be awful.
That's true.
Whereas
the writing elevates that show tremendously. But anyway, what were we saying?
So my thought was, about along the whole how do you know who your friends are anymore? Also, in the terms of those kids, they probably never had a significant other. How can they be sure that the significant others that they meet are, unless they're another star themselves, aren't also out for their fame or money or had a preconceived idea of who they were as a person?
Well, it's not even.
Can't necessarily even trust other stars because anyone could have ulterior motives for anything.
Yep.
Oh, I know that. There are some stars that are with other stars, and then I've seen so many bad nanny situations going on in the press. I feel bad for. They're always out of the house, so a lot of them do have private daycare with a nanny living in their mansion, and but aside from that, there are some stars that use each other as crutches and who knows what. But
this just makes me think of collabs with YouTube.
I read that's weird.
So Arc Scorched Earth is a $20 expansion for a $30 game.
Yes.
Does it add as much content?
So the other last reason why I'm not as angry about it, from my perspective, it adds quite a lot. The other reason why I'm not angry about it is because the game's constantly updated anyway. I think I'd be angry if Catacomb Kids busted out a paid DLC right now. I think I'd be furious about that because it's just a game that hasn't been updated in 2 months and has had spotty development and slow progress. Whereas Ark, like, every month or two, they add a new dinosaur, a couple new features, a bunch of new items. They released a free expansion pack, like a month ago, which involves, like, more teamwork and, like, trade skills and stuff. And it's just like, after a certain point, I'm just like, whatever. Like, I see why people are angry, but to some degree, it's like...
Columnar jointings everywhere. I'm sorry, I just opened the pictures,
Yes.
and the first image of there's a dragon with 2 eggs and just surrounded by columnar jointing as one of the first promotional images. It's in every game now. There's no escaping it. We have enough polygons to render it, and it'll be in everything now.
I was playing it, I was thinking, yeah, Keith would like this. From, like, a geological standpoint. It's also interesting playing the game from, like, a desert perspective. I ended up getting, like, heat stroke halfway through and not realizing I had heat stroke or not knowing how to deal with it.
Wait, where was this?
He's talking
This
about
is
the
in a
game,
game.
not real
Yeah,
life.
because
Because I know that he's talked about
Oh, yeah, I've
all
had-
his terrible
Luchador.
childhood memories of
Well,
kids beating him
I mean,
up
I
and
actually
leaving
straight
him
up
to
had
die.
I had heat stroke at one point, which was awful.
Sucks.
You
You can't do anything about it. You just gotta
you
wait
can't.
it out and drink
But-
a lot of water.
Yeah. I mean, technically, you can go to the hospital and get an IV drip, but
That happened. I experienced people having that because on our geology trip we were literally mapping in Death Valley, and it was
in
110
Death Valley.
degrees. And over the course of that trip, 4 different people were hospitalized.
Happens.
At
It
what
is Death
point
Valley.
would the school
It's called Death Valley.
administrators say, this is too risky of a field trip venture for our children to be partaking in? Like,
Well,
this is in
it wasn't a
college.
it was a college trip
oh,
for people training to be
sorry.
professionals.
I was thinking of elementary school students doing this. Nah,
It was
sorry.
a group
Oh,
of people
this
aged like 24 through 45.
Yeah.
Like, it's just people people
That
ignoring
means-
recommendations about how to survive.
That means you could sign your own forms saying that
Yep.
you know the consequences and you're willing to risk life and limb. For the sake
Forms
of
that
science.
forms that people ironically do not read.
Don't read the fine print. We are not liable for your safety, so you can't
Officially
sue the
old enough to
school.
agree to things without reading them. But on the Ark topic, I think the secret reason why this franchise, now it's a franchise technically, basically, is early access, is because then they always have an excuse for everything wrong with it forever.
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
This whole genre stays early access. It's an entire genre of early access games, like open world survival. You can just
Is
call it.
Rust
You can,
still
you
early
can call
access?
the
Oh, yeah,
entire genre
absolutely.
early access open world
Unreal.
survival, because all of them are in early
For forever.
access, except for like
Yep.
Miasmata and
And
Lone
Minecraft.
Survivor,
I mean,
I
at
think-
the
tech-
same time, there
technically
are
No Man's Sky,
there are
but it feels
well,
early access.
I mean, there are definitely success stories that I would say that are like legitimately good early access survival ones. I'd say Ark is because they
So-
constantly update it.
My whole thing with survival
Shell,
games and
you interrupted me. You put your hand in front of me to interrupt me,
sorry, I have
just
a
because you
thought.
want to get your point.
I have a thought. I usually don't have thoughts about your conversations
Yeah,
about
but I
particular
don't-
games that I don't play, but I think I know something. I think I do.
It's just
Remember what I was saying earlier, Keith?
What?
we're arguing, and it sounds like we're talking in a different language. It's totally true. But so
A different language.
What's another one? Subnautica, and I'd say Don't Starve. Also very good. Don't Starve is a very good example of like early access done well. Ark
Don't
is
Starve had
really
like the weirdest use of early access I've seen before, where they launched the game 1.0 and then launched an early access for their multiplayer. That was like, I didn't know Steam even
Yeah,
had
I'd
that
never
kind of
seen anything like
functionality.
that.
They had early
that
access.
was a really
it was like early
strange
access
thing.
DLC basically.
Well, yeah, and then they also released an expansion pack, which was early access, and they did a lot of early access there, but they've completed all of them, and are
Yeah.
slowly going to have that,
And that's because they're Clay Entertainment.
yeah, and like,
They do good.
I don't know, it's kind of one of those that where, as long as it doesn't go the way of, like, what was it, Savage Lands, I don't care.
Yeah.
No.
My thought about the whole early access and what was it? What was the game type
like-
that you referred to them as? Survival?
Yeah.
I think the one key factor with those is that, I mean, because they are open world and there's so much that you can do with the game, I think they like opening them up early access when it has like the bare bones functionality and whatever
And it
else
takes so little time to get to that point.
right, so that they see what people want to do with it, and then they add the features in later, which makes me feel like they're almost relying on the audience to build the games for them.
Yep. And it's a very cheap way to do it, and you get a very quick return on your investment of time because people will just throw so much money.
And here's one of the big tricks. If you're early access, you don't have reviews.
Survival. Also, yeah.
All you get is word of mouth, which is generally positive because people only talk about things they like generally, or drama,
or
and
really,
no reviews
really
to
negative.
cloud that image, which leads to easier purchases because there's no second guessing it because some guy said somewhere that it's a 2-star game or something. Because
I mean,
no one
totally
reviews early access.
There's totally reviews for. Oh, you mean like
if the game
official site reviews?
Like scored reviews that people read and like spread. There's no IGN for Rust.
Yeah, you're right.
Like
this does kind of go
the
back to my
Metacritic blanks, while comically created, their Metacritic pages, while comically created in like 2013, have no reviews scored on them. Huh? Like how that works
it's like
out.
that review that Carl got back, or Wander, I should say.
Oh yeah,
where
they're
the dude is like,
they're still leaving responses to people.
yeah, the dude
on
is
that
like,
page.
it's early access, therefore you can't give us a bad review yet.
Steam says otherwise due to the part where the buttons exist.
Like I'm okay with early access as long as it's like clearly maintained. Vagante is an early access success. I started playing Dungeon Souls again, and that's pretty damn good. They've used player feedback incredibly well. And, it's a satisfying experience. I will admit that the industry is too reliant on it, though.
I think the problem is they don't want to spend so much time on a game that could very well flop right out of the gate.
A lot of them just don't have the funding, too. Mm-hmm. Like, most games are expensive to make. Most Kickstarters are like way too low for like the actual budget required, and a lot of people are just like, well then just put it on early access and close enough.
So there's a girl that I follow, and I've been looking at like how she runs her Etsy business among other Etsy sellers, just to see like where does the kind of stuff that I make eventually lead to. And she does Kickstarter campaigns, and I mean, obviously it's funding to produce plushies that might be like mass produced overseas. I don't know if I'd ever do that. Unfortunately, I'm still working everything by hand. But just the whole thing of, making, upwards of $35,000. And that's all these backers. And of course, the backers get things in return. If the Kickstarter goes through, they get this and such product, or however many products that their specific tier gives them. But I think that it's a really interesting way to get things off the ground because, I mean, the people who want those items
That's
are
the
like,
whole point of a Kickstarter, anyway.
if this doesn't go through, then I don't get my item. So I'm going to suggest it to all my friends, and they're gonna put into it too.
That's the worst part, though, because there's a lot of Kickstarters that don't make it. They get the funding and then they just disappear.
Victor for Children is probably the biggest
People desperately need to know that Kickstarters are not a promise that a thing will actually happen. You're funding an idea, maybe, basically.
I noticed that a lot of Kickstarters ran under the only if we get to our initial funding goal do we actually take the money from you.
That's all of Kickstarter. That's the only way Kickstarter works.
Yeah, that's how Kickstarter works.
If you ever hear about any other system, that's a different crowdfunding service.
Or they're lying.
Okay.
So the one exception that I've been kind of like sticking with, I mean, there's been a couple. Planet Nomads, which is another open world survival, had a Kickstarter. I think it was the first thing I backed. But the one exception that I've been making is Square Enix has started this like indie fund thing where they will match Kickstarter money. And the fun. Anytime they put up something that looks cool, I'm like, I can probably go with that because I can't imagine they're just going to like not finish the game and snub Square Enix on top of Kickstarter. So it's usually a pretty good sign that either probably Square Enix would roll in and be like, yeah, we're taking your game now.
I gotta say though, it feels really gross when a Kickstarter is advertised at on an E3 stage.
Oh yeah. No
like the
way.
Shenmue Kickstarter is like the scummiest thing I've ever heard of from a AAA dev.
You didn't hear about the whole
Kickstarter?
Yeah, they did a Kickstarter for
Shenmue.
Shenmue 3, and it was on the PlayStation 4 E3 stage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? You're a publisher. Publish the game. Don't ask your audience for Kickstarter money. If you don't have enough confidence in it that it needs to be Kickstarted, it shouldn't be an E3.
Yeah.
What the fuck is this entire
they got,
system
like,
happening?
$3 million, and there was still like questions of like, is this going to get made?
I'm looking at it. Wait,
It's
what?
so
right now it
gross.
says they've only. Oh, 6 mil. Oh, I misread that second comma as a period. Yeah, they got $6 million. That's 3 times what they were asking for.
It's also it's also a
what
super
the
disingenuous Kickstarter because that game clearly doesn't have a cost that lines up with what they're asking for or what they got. Because video games are way more expensive than that.
Yeah, especially for a like sort of.
It's an ad campaign almost.
It seriously is like a fake little like ad campaign to gauge interest and people fell for it.
It's an interest check, and it's also so people feel invested
Shenmue
in the
3 is
product
literally
ahead of
the worst
time.
pre-order that's ever happened.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, it's
What were you gonna say,
horrifying
Shel?
that people just fell right into this ad campaign.
I was gonna say that I remember that there were actually some games that only when a certain tier was reached would they add a new feature to a game.
Yeah, that's kind of a cool part of Kickstarter, though. Stretch goals.
Yeah.
As long as they're meaningful. There's also a lot of like unmeaningful ways to do it.
You know what's actually a great example of Kickstarter game terrible no matter what? Mighty Number 9. Fuck Mighty Number 9. Moving on.
I don't know anything about that, but
Oh, you didn't, and you played Mega Man.
yep. I heard
bad.
it was terrible, so I skipped it.
I bought it.
He's a big Mega Man
Yeah,
fan.
I'm a huge Mega Man fan. I almost entirely listened to Mega Man remixes while we were playing Scrap Mechanic. I bought
Here's
it.
a quote from Wikipedia. The game's design, graphics, content, voice acting, and technical issues were criticized.
So
There's
all the
not
parts
much
of it.
left.
Yeah, so I loaded up the game. I played the tutorial, and I recorded the entire thing. I looked at the level select. They wouldn't stop talking to me, by the way, while I was looking at the level select, instead of being like, bing, 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 as you switch between the boss portraits. It's like, this guy does da, 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 and then you switch, and then it's like, this guy does da, 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 and then you go back and do the dialogue again, and I'm like, don't want. It was awful. And I uninstalled the game, returned it to Steam, and deleted the footage, because my commentary after a certain point dropped off to,
They're doing little...
That's pretty funny. But also,
Yeah.
I wonder how the ladies' movements and everything are, because the guy just looks burly.
Oh,
We're talking
she's
about the
looking at
brute.
Necropolis again.
Shell
We can talk
is
about
giving
that.
no context to randomly talking about game that's happening in front of her again.
We can talk about that in a couple of minutes,
When
because
we
we should probably actually wap this up, because this has been
Yeah,
going on
I
for
think-
2 hours.
yeah, we've definitely hit maximum podcast time.
All right,
Absolutely.
so guys, once again, it's 4nerds.tumblr.com/ask if you want to send in questions, and we'll probably be doing a lot of this in the future. It gives us more ability to all contribite to something as opposed to
You make
when
the
we fall
content,
back on
viewers.
topics that what
Nothing. I was being sarcastic and an ass.
I didn't hear it at all though.
That's fine.
It gives us more to go on than with the moments when we're like one person played a game and wants to talk about it, but then no one's played it, and it's harder than questions everyone can ask together. Hopefully, I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what any of this is. See you next time.
Wow, that was a slick ending.